Welcome to the Power of Your Mind podcast. I'm Victoria Gallagher, your host. Have you been attempting to use law of attraction or hypnosis to attract financial abundance, a soulmate, or career success? Would you like to be happy, motivated, and successful? Have better health, enjoy more fulfilling relationships, overcome struggle, and gain mastery over your life? Then join me on this amazing self-help podcast where you'll unleash the power of your mind. I'll be sharing 20 years of wisdom and techniques of hypnotherapy, law of attraction, visualization, meditation, personal growth, positive affirmations, and other effective methods to help you tap into the great power which resides in your mind and become the best version of yourself. Well, hello and welcome to today's episode of the Power of Your Mind podcast. You're listening to episode number 75. I'm Victoria Gallagher, Law of Attraction coach and #1 best-selling author of Practical Law of Attraction, Align Yourself with the Manifesting Conditions and Successfully Attract Your Desires. I'm also a clinical hypnotherapist, founder of HipTalk.com and HypnoCloud apps. So be sure to stop by HipTalk.com, sign up for your free self-hypnosis video training course. And for our listeners who found us through Power of Your Mind podcast, you can get 35% off your first order of hypnosis downloads when you apply the code podcast to your shopping cart. Also, be sure to watch and download our latest HypnoCloud app in the iTunes store. So today I have a very special guest with me, Jennifer Alembik. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, Alembik.
Alembik. Jennifer Alembik is a food addiction coach and recovering food addict who has devoted her life to speaking, writing, and coaching on this debilitating disease. Jenny's intense passion to raise awareness and help others comes from her own personal struggle with food. She sought treatment at age 21, but sadly, it was ineffective. Finally, at the age of 45 years, she learned that her severe addiction to sugar and flour, the addictive culprits of her insane obsession and compulsion to eat, she currently resides in Florida with her 3 children, maintaining a 75-pound weight loss and enjoying a full life, obsession-free. Today, Jennifer is going to share some of her insights about harnessing the power of your mind by avoiding brain fog-induced sugar and flour consumption. So welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yes, thank you for being on the show. And we were having a little discussion before I introduced you, just about how this is such a crazy addiction, and it really runs a pretty broad spectrum of people, from people who can manage it and some people who really cannot manage it.
Yeah, there's a huge spectrum for food addiction. And like we said, it goes from anorexic to my 600-pound life. Yeah. But food addiction is characterized by an obsession with food, an obsession with weight, and loss of control over the amount eaten. Ooh. And that's really important, that definition, because some people suffer with if bread is on the table, they don't want it, or they know they might get a little carried away, or they might have 2 pieces. But food addiction does not care what race, religion, color you are, or size. It does not discriminate. We come in all shapes and sizes. It is bottom line about the obsession and the compulsion to eat and what sugar and flour does to our system.
Yes. I want to definitely get into that sugar and flour discussion because, it is, I've found for myself in my own journey of 51 years on this planet, and also coming from, which you may not know, but this is kind of personal to me because I come from a family that does deal with this food addiction, and it's something I personally have been able to gain control over because I saw it and I made a decision about my life very, very early on in my life. But, that's coming from having several people in my family who are extremely, extremely obese, 500-600 pounds. So I know that side of it. I mean, we don't have any of the anorexic side at all on my family. It's all the, people who like to eat a lot and like to eat and choose a lot of the wrong foods. And then you have the food pushers, like we were talking about, how, I've been on a keto diet for the last year, and I just, I don't have that stuff in my system anymore, and I don't want it in my system. I didn't know that I was going to make the choice. I thought I was going to be on this diet for about 3 months, but it's been over a year, and I don't want to go down that path anymore. And I feel better. And I like what you talk about with regard to the brain fog, because I'm so much more mentally clear. I know.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I just learned this recently myself, that there's a new term they're calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes.
Type 3 diabetes.
Yeah. Type 3 is, this is all based on sugar intake. I don't think that's all of what Alzheimer's is. I'm not defining that, but that's what they're calling type 3 diabetes, Alzheimer's. And that's, sugar has a tremendous effect on our system and on our brain and how we react to things, how quickly we react. And if you're abusing flour and sugar, and I want to talk about, most people say sugar is the problem, flour is not my problem. I'm not a bread person, I'm a sweets person. Or you get the opposite. I'm a bread person, I'm not a sweets person. But let's say you're a sugar person. But, if you're an addict, and even though you don't prefer bread, but you're having 3 bagels, all that carbs in your system breaks down into sugar. So it leads you right back to the sugar. So it's a vicious cycle that you need to get off of. And once you get those substances out of your system, you do start thinking clearer. You're all of a sudden, when I was at the height of my addiction, I was constantly couldn't find my keys, where I walked into a room, didn't know where anything was. And I was 40s, in my early 40s. That should not have been happening. And it was all due to the way I was eating, because that doesn't happen to me anymore.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense. It really does. I mean, knowing what we know about this, about the effect that this has on the brain. So before we dive into that, for people who just don't even really know or have a context, what is food addiction?
Well, like I said, it's characterized by the obsession. So basically, we all eat. Sometimes we all eat too much, a little bit. That's not the difference. It's when you are the person who is digging food out of the garbage, when all you think about is what you're going to eat, when you're going to eat it, how you're going to get it. You're driving home from work. You're stopping 2-3 times. And look, our crack houses are everywhere. They are at the CVS. They are at the 7-Eleven. You go shopping in your normal to get your groceries. That is our crack house. You cannot go anywhere. That is why this addiction is so hard to beat. And that is why obesity is so prevalent. And it's a pandemic, because sugar is everywhere. It's innocent. It's accessible. It's acceptable. You have food pushers all the time. Just try it. It's just a little. You're not going to gain weight from one bite, because it's so innocent. But that one bite will lead me back to getting in my car and going shopping and looking for my food and making sure I have my stuff for my binge for the night. And it's just like any other addict, cocaine addict, heroin addict, alcoholic. When you get to that point where all you do is just obsess. And let me tell you, by the end of my journey with this food, before I realized and was told that I had a serious sugar and flour addiction, that my body was allergic to this stuff, I hadn't seen a fruit or vegetable in God knows how long, and I couldn't diet anymore. I had been on all the diets. It was my daughter's bat mitzvah, my oldest, and I remember going into a store, trying on a size 14, and it was tight. I couldn't even get into it. And it blew me away. Like I was just getting bigger and bigger. And it seemed like the more I dieted, the heavier I was getting, because the baseline kept going up and up. And it was just, it's a horrible, self-loathing, awful disease. Like any other addiction, it's just, it controls and rules your life. And by the end, when I started to seek help, I was kind of resigned to being heavy. I was like, I've been chubby all my life. I don't know if I'll ever get thin, but I couldn't stand the noise in my head anymore. Yeah. I couldn't stand the constant chatter. You're hungry. The food is here. If something was in my freezer, in the garage, it would talk to me, like food was constantly calling, and it was going from the salt to the sweet, to the crunchy, to the savory, to the smooth, it just never ended.
Right.
It just never ended.
I'm kind of relieved to hear you talk about it as this obsession, like where it's something you can't get out of your mind. Because for me personally, I've because I'm sitting here, asking myself, this is going to be my next question, how do you know if you're an addict or not? And so I'm sure there are various different spectrums, various different levels of addiction. For me, it's kind of like, I can't, I tend to just can't stop at one kind of thing. But if it's not around, or if somebody's not telling me to have it, or if I'm not at a restaurant and I didn't start on the basket of chips or the basket of bread or whatever, then I'm fine. But it's like, for me, it's like once I get started, it's kind of hard to stop. But then, I forgive myself. The next day I'm good to go. So how does a person know and identify themselves as somebody who has that addiction?
Yeah. I think it's somebody, first of all, who cannot stop eating. That's one of the signs. You just cannot stop eating. Or you trick yourself and you think you're good for 3 days, but then you're back on the horse, or you're swearing every Monday that you're gonna, you're not going to eat this week, or you're going to get off it, and then you're eating by 11 a.m. But it really is a personal diagnosis in a way, because if it's causing you pain, if it's causing you misery, and if it's taking up too much space in your day about your body or food or your weight, then there's a problem.
Yeah.
That's really how I would define it. If it's just taking up way too much time and space, like I knew a woman, she was not very heavy. In her mind, she was heavy, but maybe she had 30, 40 pounds to lose. But she was constantly thinking about her weight, worrying about the size of her butt. Everywhere she went, she was like, do I look fat? Do I look fat? I mean, she was obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And never had peace from that. She never, even when she went on a diet, the quiet never went away. And when you get sugar and flour out of your system and you get on a healthy food plan and you're watching your quantities, that's a big one also, watching your quantities, and you start losing weight, and you start feeling good about yourself. Then you start the self-care process. Then you want to keep it up, but you must have support. It is not easy to go through this world in today's day and age where food is so abundant, so accessible, and everywhere. And there's no longer, we barely have meal times anymore. People just eat all day long,
yeah.
Right? So it's so hard. So you have to have either a great coach or a great 12-step support group or another type of support group where people are dealing with the same issue as you and working on living a sugar and flour-free life.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense.
The one day at a time deal, but it's not easy.
Yeah. Now, is it one of those situations where, like, once you've acknowledged that, you're a food addict, are you always a food addict, or can you?
I think it's like any addiction. Like, once you're an alcoholic, they say, once you're a pickle, you can't go back to a cucumber. It's the same thing with food. Like, I would do anything. I would cut off my right arm if somebody would say to me, cut off your arm, but you'll be able to eat anything you want and it will never be an issue. I'd sign up. Mm-hmm. But addicts don't get that. We just don't get that option. And here's the baffling thing about addiction. I've been clean and sober since I'm 21. So I've been clean and sober for 29 years. And I have watched thousands and thousands of people go through the program. And I have watched people who have stayed sober for 20 years, 30 years, 15 years, pick up a drink and go right back to the addiction, right back to where they started. And we don't understand why that is. We just don't know. But we know that if we pick up that substance again in our system, it's over. So, you know, what's going on with your relatives who are obese and with addicts is when I put sugar and flour in my mouth, it immediately sets up a physical compulsion and a mental obsession that just starts the wheels going.
Yeah.
And then you're off to the races.
And I could relate to that with, you know, being a former smoker. I mean, I smoked pretty much from the time I was 8 years old till I was 28. I was sort of forced to quit. I always had that goal that I was going to quit every year, but then, you know, you quit for a few days and you go right back to it. And then I had a lung collapse, and then I was able to quit pretty easily because it was an emotionally traumatic experience. And I think emotionally traumatic experiences are one way that the mind can shut off that addiction immediately. I mean, and I never, ever, ever picked up another cigarette from that moment forward. And that's been probably a little over 21 years, 22 years. So I can relate to that. I've never had an urge to pick up a cigarette again, but I feel like if I ever did, I would literally go right back to the pack a day that I was smoking.
I think you brought up a great point. Normally, food addicts, first of all, they hate the word addict. I mean, this is not a sexy addiction. Yeah. You know, it's not like cocaine where, you know, you're snorting, nobody knows, and you're really skinny. And obesity is painful. And addiction is not fun. Normally, for people to get help, they have to suffer. They've had to have reached their pain threshold, either emotionally or physically. That where enough is enough and they're just done. And that's why the spectrum is so wide, because one person at 20 extra pounds on their body and they're flipping out. And for some people, it's 200 pounds. I mean, I have worked with people who are over 300 pounds and, you know, they'd be happy if they lost 40, 50 pounds because there's another mix to addiction, food addiction, which is body dysmorphia, where we really don't see ourselves as what we look like. It's such a, I don't know, I can't explain that phenomenon either, but we look in the mirror and I won't see what you see.
If you find value in this personal growth related material, I strongly recommend that you sign up for your $1 trial to my Personal Growth Club. Just head on over to personalgrowthclub.com and get a whole month of premium Personal Growth Club video training materials, meditations. You also get 6 free hypnosis sessions that are valued at over $174, all for this trial of just $1. Even if you cancel, you can keep the 6 hypnosis sessions. That's my gift to you, and that's how confident I am that you are going to love Personal Growth Club. Go to personalgrowthclub.com and start your $1 1-month trial today. Yeah. And it goes both ways. Sometimes you look at yourself and you see yourself larger than you really are. And sometimes it's just the opposite. You see yourself, you don't see the weight gain. You're like in denial.
Right. And then all of a sudden, you know, I hear this story all the time. I was walking down the street and I saw my reflection and I couldn't believe it was me. You know, because it was that surprise. Normally when you're looking in a mirror, you're expecting to see the you that you're used to seeing. But when you're walking down the street and you get a glimpse of yourself in the department store and you're like, oh my God, who is that? Or sometimes somebody will show you a photograph and you're like, that's me? Like, oh my gosh, I didn't know. You know, addicts tend to, like, especially women, like women will identify with this. They're great with their nails, makeup, hair, and from the neck up, and the wrist down, jewelry doesn't discriminate. It looks gorgeous on everybody. Pocketbooks look fabulous. Makeup makes everybody look beautiful, but we hide the body.
Yeah.
We just cover it up with big black clothes that hide us. We're good at that. And we just look from the neck up, and I was very good at disassociating from my body.
Yeah.
And not really seeing. And the food helped with that. When you're eating massive amounts, and when you're obese, you have to eat large amounts of food to stay there. It was just numbing me out.
Mm-hmm.
I was just numb. And I was high functioning. I had 3 kids. I had a husband at the time. And I was doing everything, showing up and going where I had to go and do what I had to do. But if I didn't have to take care of them, I would have been in the house all day long just eating.
Well, and I also understand, too, that the sugar creates certain neurochemicals in the brain, which we actually get more addicted to those neurochemicals than even heroin.
Yes. They've stated that it's more addictive. Sugar is more addictive than heroin, cocaine. I've read that. I've seen that.
What is your opinion?
What is my opinion? I can only share, I've never tried cocaine or heroin.
Neither have I. Thank goodness.
I can just tell you that if it is, it's awful. Like any addiction. Look, a guy was, I was having somewhat of a writing banter back and forth with somebody, and he said addiction is a label that people get attached to. And I was like, you know what? We put labels on people and things. But this is one label I would give my right arm to get away from. Like, I didn't sign up to be an addict. It wasn't like I came and said, when I'm 8 years old, I want to become a food addict. Like, no, nobody wants to be an addict. It's something that happens physically, emotionally, mentally, and it's a perfect storm sometimes. I mean, the way I grew up, I was prone to addiction, growing up with addiction in my family, and then the situation that I grew up in. But I have come across hundreds of people that say they grew up in wonderful, loving homes with 2 parents, and they were the only addict among their siblings and their family. How do you explain that?
And I was just going to ask you, because you mentioned some people are a little bit more predisposed to it, and I can see, psychologically how that's possible. But is it also, are you maybe physiologically more prone as well?
There is a thought and theory that there is DNA, that we do have a genetic predisposition to addiction. The way I think of it is, I think that maybe I did have the genes somewhere, that I do in my DNA, but I think because of the environment that I grew up in, which was tumultuous and uncertain and saw things that I shouldn't have seen, I think it ignited the addiction. And I sought food to comfort and to numb me, because I was young when I found food. I was like 6. So, I really can't say, I don't think, and I think that's the baffling thing about addiction. We just don't know where it comes from, when it starts. I have met people that say they were born food addicts, and I have met people that said it didn't happen until they started having children. It's been the gamut. But I think also, because the way food is created in our culture now, and it is put in everything, sugars, fats, oils, salt, is in everything. We are creating addicts at this point. We're no longer like random chance. We are creating addicts. And I think the pandemic of obesity is a clear sign of that.
There was a movie we saw. It was not Forks Over Knives, because that was another good one, but there was another one that talked about the sugar addiction and how, I mean, literally, it's kind of in a way maybe a conspiracy, but, the government is really keeping us addicted to these things.
There is a whole theory, and it makes a lot of sense. What happened this was with Philip Morris, when they were pushing and marketing cigarettes. They figured out how to market and sell cigarettes. And it was so brilliant that they said, let's do this with food. So they started marketing the same way, and look at where we are today.
Yeah.
We have, and they stopped advertising cigarettes when people started dying. And it became such a health issue in America that the government had to get involved. And I think that at some point, we will see the same thing in the food industry. that at some point, too many Americans are going to be obese, that they will have to pass some kind of law. I don't know how it will manifest, but there will be something where maybe they'll cap the amount of sugar per serving in every product that's processed. I don't know exactly how it will, but I know right now certain states are taxing sugar drinks and things like that too, because they say it does affect the purchase power. So that would help the lower income and demographic that suffers from obesity more so than higher socioeconomic groups.
Right.
But it just, I don't know. I think we're all being affected. Food is being engineered specifically to be addictive, because people want more sugar, more fat, more salt. Our body will crave it. So that's what's going on.
It's sad. It's really sad. So what is the mindset solution? How can we use our mindsets to help us to heal from this addiction?
Great question. I think, first of all, you have to be willing to put down the food. You have to be willing to get off the substance because, like you said, you wouldn't have been able to quit smoking if you didn't quit. Like if you kept every Friday night picking up a cigarette, you probably wouldn't be doing it. So as a food addiction coach and a recovering food addict, that's what I recommend. You've got to cut sugar and flour out of your diet, get clean, get detoxed, which will take a while, I will say, and it's not a joyful process for everybody. It could be painful. It could be uncomfortable. And then the mindset of what really helped me is I don't eat sugar and flour. People kept asking me, what are you doing? Because they saw me losing weight. And I say, I don't eat sugar and flour. And that was the end of the conversation because most people don't want to give it up.
Yeah.
So once I really owned that, I don't eat sugar and flour, and I now weigh and measure 3 meals a day. I eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I keep my food super simple. No fancy recipes. This is another thing. Addicts, people are always pushing recipes. Addicts and recipes don't get along because then what they're doing is they're fondling with their food. They're making love to their food. They're making they're getting creative and making concoctions. And you know what? Make your food, make it simple, bake it, roast it, broil it, and get out of the kitchen.
Yeah.
You don't need to be there. You don't want to be there. It's not where you belong. Make your food, and food is meant to nourish your body so that you have the energy to go out and live your life.
Yes. Yeah. And that's, I've just never really been somebody who likes to spend a whole lot of time. I just I want to get in and get out and just make the food because I know I need to eat. And, I do believe to a degree food is meant to be enjoyed, but, I think if I think you can run the risk of obviously enjoying it too much. So I totally get what you're saying.
It's not about enjoyment because I love my food.
Yeah.
And you'll see as you get sugar and flour out of your system and you detox, your taste buds come alive. Mm-hmm. You're not looking anymore for the sugar, fat, and salt, and you're going to start tasting foods that have different flavors. So, it's not about not enjoying your food. It's about just keeping it simple and not getting sucked in again because you can get obsessed with recipes. Yeah. You can get obsessed with, you're back in the food shopping store shopping for ingredients. You don't want to be there. We want to keep you away from the drug as much as possible. That's more of what it's about.
Yeah. And I like that you said, as far as the mindset, it's a mindset of, I don't partake in sugar and flour. I just don't. And
that's the start of it.
Yeah.
That's the start of it. And then the other thing is that really helped me is you've got to put some barriers, markers, boundaries in your life and implement certain habits that really set you up for a successful day. And that goes for anybody who wants to be successful in their day, whatever you're choosing, whatever your path is. I do meditation every morning. I write down my food every night so I know exactly what I'm eating the following day. It sets free a lot of brain power. I don't have to worry. I wake up, I know exactly what I'm eating. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to stand in front of the refrigerator and open it 15 times to decide and walk around the kitchen and open all the cabinets. What am I going to eat today? No longer, it's no longer an issue.
Yeah.
So there are certain things and boundaries and practices, tools and techniques that you can learn and implement in your life that set you up for this type of lifestyle. And you really have to own that this is a commitment. It is the lifestyle change. It's not a fad. It's not until you get 40 pounds off. It's not until anything. It's, I want to take care of myself. I deserve to be happy and healthy and vibrant and be the best version of myself. That's what I came here to be. That's what we are all here to do, is become the best version of ourselves. And if I'm busy abusing myself with food, that's not loving. That's not kind. And it's not the way I want to live.
Yeah. And, a couple of other things to add to that, because I was just in London for the past 2 weeks. Okay. And so if you go to London, I mean, it's all, they've got lots of pastries and lots of, things that I just don't partake in. And, just on my flight home yesterday, it was just a perfect example. I think most people will make that commitment to themselves, but then they'll let themselves off the hook for, when life is too busy, or when they're on vacation, or when it's somebody's birthday or a wedding or an anniversary. And before you know it, basically, if you allow yourself to get off the hook for all of those events, I mean, half the time there's some event or some excuse going on in your life. And so you have to, commitment is commitment. There's no exceptions to a commitment. Do you agree?
100%. You've got to be both feet in and really understand what it means to cut these two products, sugar and flour, out of your system. And it does take commitment. And I struggle with it even when I travel. It's like, I'd love to give myself a day off. I would love to have a break, but I know where that will lead me. It will lead me back to the food. I'll be face down in it, and I will be eating and binging and gaining weight faster than I could say, what happened? So I know. So, I love what you said. We make excuses all the time. Like, oh, I had a bad day. I deserve. We're still
I deserve.
We're still rewarding ourselves with food.
Yeah.
And we do that. Teachers do it at school all the time. I have chocolate kisses for everybody who gets the answer right. We reward ourselves with food constantly.
Oh, yeah. And it starts even, in childhood with parents, it's like, you give a pacifier, you give a bottle, you give all of these things to pacify and so that we don't have to feel the physical sensations in our body.
Yes. I love that you're bringing that up. That's why support during this whole thing is so important, because when you come across those emotions, and we will, because we are human every day, it's how do I deal with it? How do I get okay with it and feel it in my body that I just don't want to numb out and grab the food? Anger was a big one for me. When I first got abstinent, I was like, I didn't know how to, it felt so uncomfortable in my body. I didn't even know. It was like I would shake. I would vibrate because I wasn't using the food anymore. And I had to learn how to deal with that, learn how to regulate emotions.
Yeah.
Is so important for addicts. And we do start out with low emotional intelligence. Most addicts suffer from emotional intelligence, low pockets, because it's coping skills, total coping skills. And we use food to cope. We use food, and the thing is, it's acceptable in our culture. If you go to a funeral, we're celebrating with food. If you go to a wedding, we're celebrating with food. But if I said to you, let's have some cocaine. We so good. Let's have some cocaine. You'd be like, are you crazy? Because that's the sugar is just as powerful and serious, but it's a slower death, and it's more acceptable. It's okay to be fat. That's okay. Look at it. Most people are overweight. 2/3 of America is overweight. So it's the new norm.
Yes, it is. It is normal. It's normal, and it's more and more acceptable, and and then of course there's this whole other population that wants to also sell us on the fact that big is beautiful, and that we need to accept our big obese bodies. And I don't know what is your
I think it's dangerous. I love that we should all love each other and own our own bodies and own ourselves.
Yeah.
But I think it's a BS spin on just love me for where I'm at and don't let me take personal responsibility for my health.
Yeah.
Because no matter what you say, being overweight is not healthy for you.
Exactly.
Your heart is not meant to carry more 30, 40, 100 extra pounds on your body. Number one killer in the United States, heart disease. It's because of the way we eat, because we don't take care of ourselves, never mind the weight. But I think that's a fine, dangerous line to walk along. And I think it's a cop-out for heavy, heavy women who want so desperately to lose weight, can't lose it, or they say it's part of their culture. But I don't think it's comfortable for anybody to be 100 pounds overweight. I don't care who you are. You're physically suffering somewhere. Your knees hurt, your back hurts, your feet hurt. You don't sleep well. You think your mattress has a problem. You think it's your hormones. You think it's your thyroid. You think it's your metabolism. I played the game. I did it all. I thought something's off in my body to make me be this crazy heavy person, because I didn't think I was really eating that much. But when you put the food down and you get on a healthy food plan and you really start eating that way, you realize, like, wow, was I eating a lot of food? I mean, I can put it away. Like, it's crazy how much a food addict can eat. And some exercise for 3 hours, 5 hours a day to get rid of it. Some people purge and some people don't, and they just keep eating, and that's where we get overweight people.
Hello, this is Victoria Gallagher. I hope you're enjoying listening to the Power of Your Mind podcast. As a way of thanking you for listening, I'd like to offer you a one-time discount of 35% off your first order at hiptalk.com. Just go to hiptalk.com and enter the code PODCAST in the discount code area in your cart, and you'll receive 35% off your first order. Thank you so much for listening to the Power of Your Mind podcast. Yeah, and it's not to shame somebody who is at, a level of obesity. It's just, I mean, you have to love yourself as you are. You have to accept yourself as you are you have to accept, I am here. I love myself as I am. And because I love myself, I am going to get help.
See, I couldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the opposite for me, and I don't think I'm alone in this. Yeah. And I love that you're bringing this up. This is such a juicy conversation.
Yeah.
I was incapable of loving myself large.
Yes.
I hated it. I was uncomfortable, and I didn't think I was pretty or anything. It was just horrible to be me in my body, and I could not love myself. So it took me to take action. It wasn't love yourself first, then lose weight. No.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It was I had to do esteemable acts to gain self-esteem.
Yeah.
I had to start treating myself well, eating right, taking care of myself, and then I was learning how to take care of myself. And that was an action of self-love. It took time, and it grew and got stronger. And that muscle, it's a muscle, got strong after doing this year in and year out. So I don't think that this new wave of love yourself where you're at, maybe some people can, and I think that is wonderful. But I was incapable of doing that, and I know I'm not alone in that.
I'm sure you're not. I'm sure you're not.
To get there is to start taking care of yourself, and you will learn, and it's a self-loving act to eat, to feed yourself healthy is the most beautiful thing you could do for yourself, your body, your mind, your soul, your everything.
Yeah, will commit to love yourself as the verb, and taking these actions are an act of self-love.
Right. But it's the hardest one because some people would rather get their nails done, get their hair done, and they think that's self-care. And it is part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're walking around with a severe amount of weight on you, it's your body telling you, wake up, sweetheart. You have an issue. You need to take care of. You're not.
It's scientific. I mean, anybody who wants to disagree with that it's overweight, that it's not unhealthy, that it's unhealthy to be 100 pounds overweight, it's scientific. I mean, all the data is available.
All the data is available. We know that sugar is addictive, but there's so much emotional stuff, that healing that has to go on as you're losing this weight. Exactly. Because there's so much shame that comes along with this disease.
Yes.
When you're obese and you cannot fit in an airplane chair, and you could barely fit in a booth. And I've heard such heartbreaking stories. There's so much shame. So that also has to be unpacked and dealt with as you're shedding your skin, shedding the weight, and finding out who you really are. Loving yourself for truly who you are, and knowing that you are lovable. You're lovable obese, but you don't feel lovable. I can promise you that. We are all lovable, and we need to have compassion for the obese.
Yes.
They're not choosing this. I don't believe that an obese person is choosing to be obese because they can't help it. They just can't put down the food. They are physically addicted, emotionally addicted. It's a coping mechanism, and it's widely acceptable, unlike cocaine, heroin, and alcohol.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about the treatment that, people need for dealing with this. And I wanted to find out if treatment is different for somebody who maybe is on the bulimic side, who, binges and purges, or somebody who just is a binge eater and doesn't purge. Yeah.
Great question. Anybody who's suffering from food addiction I think the solution is the same, because if you're a bulimic or you're a binge eating disorder, or whatever your modality is, and I want to keep anorexia out of this conversation for a second. We'll address it. You are using food to massive amounts and you want to excrete it in some way. So you're either throwing up, exercising, or you're not, and you're just keep eating because you feel such shame, and it's just a vicious cycle. So again, if you're binging in mass amounts, well, you're binging to get your fix, right? So It's the same thing. You've got to get off the sugar and flour. It is the same thing with alcohol. A lot of times people say, they'll meet somebody and say, you're an alcoholic. I never saw you drink, or you only used to have like 2 drinks. It's not how much you eat or how much you drink or how much you use. It's how it affects you, how it affects you personally, physically, emotionally, and mentally, spiritually. That's the difference.
Yeah, I think it comes down to whether it's controlling you or if you're the one in control, right?
Exactly, 100%. So treatment is get off the substance, get off the drug. That's number one. And then you've got to start implementing those tools and techniques into your life that will assist you in sustaining the lifestyle. So sustaining, like I said, I write down my food every night. I learn to chop and cook and shop and prepare I make a big pan of roasted vegetables and I put it in Tupperware. So I'm good for 3-4 days. Like, I've learned all this. This is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. And unfortunately, like I said, we have a community, a medical health wellness community that does not support what I'm promoting. They support moderation. They don't believe in excluding anything. It sets up the binging cycle. And that's absurd to me. It's like telling a cocaine addict to just do it on Sunday. Like, that's not going to set them up for a binge. Like, I don't know why food is such a separate category. it is a slippery slope for some people. They have a hard time putting down the sugar and flour. That's why you've got to get support or a coach who can walk you through until you find your feet, until you find your grounding, and you get into the swing and the lifestyle, and you've really taken it on and owned it. It's all about personal responsibility. It doesn't matter how much your parents love you, your significant other loves you, how much your kids love you. You have to be responsible for your own food, for your diet, your health, and your wellness.
Yes, and lifestyle. That's the thing is this diet mentality. Oh, I'm going to get off sugar for 30 days, or I'm going to get off sugar for however long. And so many people, it's like if you want to get off of it for that long, what is the benefit that you're looking to achieve out of that? And it has to become a lifestyle.
Well, a lot of people who are suffering from food addiction or obesity,
mm-hmm.
they're on cholesterol medicine, they're on diabetes medication, they have high blood pressure, they're on blood pressure medication, some people are on sleep apnea. There are so many side effects to food addiction and obesity that there's plenty of impetus to get clean. It's a matter of really, and as you go, you start realizing how good you feel, mm-hmm. and how nice it is to wear your clothes. It's so nice that I can go in a closet every morning and I know everything's going to fit. But when I was eating, I didn't know from one day to the next what was going to fit.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. So there's so many benefits, but it can't be that diet mentality. I'm going to do this until I get healthy, and then. It's like you're smoking. You quit smoking, you're done, because if you pick it up, you'll be smelling like an ashtray again.
Exactly. So other than, you had mentioned that you meditate, you write your food down, you prepare your food, in advance so that you're setting yourself up for success. Are there any other daily practices that you incorporate to stay off sugar and flour?
Yeah, I read a meditation book every morning that gives me some inspiration, a nugget to hold on to through the day. And I exercise. I have an exercise routine. I don't exercise every day, but that does keep my, feeling healthy and fit and strong. And I do seek support. I do have an intricate support that I've created a good foundation so that when I am in a bad space, let's say I have a bad day, I got some bad news, it's not that I immediately want to reach for the food, but I call people. I have a network of people that I can say to, I want to eat a dozen donuts right now. And they will say to me, okay, what's going on? Because they know it's not about the donut. It's emotionally, I'm feeling stirred and I just don't want to feel it. And I want to use. I still get those days. I don't know if they'll ever go away, but I don't act on it.
Yeah.
I just don't act on it. And then the beauty is it passes. I have learned that my feelings pass.
They change.
They change from minute to minute,
mm-hmm.
And that's okay. So, I've set up a whole network of things that really help me to stay on track. But it is a daily thing. It is a one day at a time. I recommit every morning.
Yeah.
Every morning I recommit that for today, just for today, I am not going to eat sugar and flour, and I'm going to commit to the food that I wrote down, and that's it.
I think that's a really important key, though, that you brought up is the fact that it changes moment by moment. If you can just get through this one moment, then that's going to, number one, it's going to make you feel confident that you got through that moment. So you're building, you're feeling better about yourself. If you cave in, then you're going to feel bad about yourself and you're much more likely to cave in again. But if you recognize the fact that this too shall pass, and like you said, you can get support, you can build a network of people around you who are there for you, and if that person's not available, there's somebody else who is, or just building a network of things and activities and people and circumstances that are there to help you to win.
Yep. But in the beginning, it's hard. Like I can
Yes.
do it easily now, but in
Yeah.
the beginning, when it's coming out of your system and you're detoxing, you really, like, I would say, like, treat yourself like you're in the ICU, because that's how uncomfortable it could be. That's how hard it could be. Don't think, oh, I'm getting off sugar and flour and you're going to go out to lunch with your friend the next day. Like, no.
How long does a person go through that initial detox?
What did you ask?
How long does a person, generally speaking, go through that initial detox?
It really depends on their eating habits and and how their body is taking it all in. I've seen some people in 3 days be okay.
Yeah.
And I've seen people it's taken months.
Mm-hmm.
I would say physically, like the physicalness of it got out of my body, like the sugar and flour and jonesing for it, like in the first week.
Mm-hmm.
But I was weepy for like 6 months.
Yeah.
6 months I was weepy and I didn't know what it was. And I think it was just a whole emotional detox of feeling feelings I hadn't felt in God knows how long, and being present to the world and just everything. It was really, it was wild.
Well, in a way, it's like a grieving process, because people worship this food, and it's your friend, and it's there for you whenever you're having a good day, whenever you eat food to celebrate the good things in your life, and you also eat it to help you to cope with the bad things in your life. I mean, it's always there for you. It's your best friend.
Yeah, but food is no longer an option.
Yeah.
That's another mindset that you have to adopt, is food, specifically sugar and flour, or just grabbing when you feel like it. It's not an option because you're using.
Yeah.
I eat at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Those are the times that I eat. If I am uncomfortable at 3:00 in the afternoon or I'm hungry, well, I'm not going to die, but I don't grab for anything because it's not an option.
Yeah.
Like those two mindsets, I don't eat sugar and flour, and food is not an option. And what I mean by that is when I feel like it. I eat my meals and that's it. You have to be really adopting that mindset, own it, take it on, and then live it. Because it's so easy, like you said, to make the excuse, oh, I had a hard day. This one died, I'm upset. Boom, we just pops up in our mouth. It is so just normal.
Yeah. So for somebody who's ready to take this journey, how do you suggest that they proceed to work with you?
Well, they would call me and we would have a chat, and I would really get, I want to get a background of what their story is and how it manifests in their life. How is it affecting them in their life? But the first thing I would do, if I see that they definitely have the obsession and the compulsion, that I would set them up first thing on a food plan and get them off sugar and flour. I don't care if you're organic. I don't care if you eat meat. I don't care if you eat dairy. It's all allowed. We just take those two addictive substances out of your diet. So we would set up a food plan and we would start there. And then once they get that down, and that's going to take a little time for them to get used to, they're going to have a lot of questions. Can I eat this? Can I not eat that? When can I eat? What happens if this happens? I want to go. My husband has a work dinner and I have to go. Okay. There are so many ways. You have to teach them how to live in the world with this new mindset.
Yeah.
And it is possible. They just have to learn how to do it. So we go through all that, and then we start implementing tools. So like the ones I said, okay, you got to start writing down your food. This is a habit. This is a good habit to instill, so that I've been doing this for almost 6 years now, and I don't think I've missed one day of writing down my food.
Wow.
I brush my teeth every day.
Yeah.
I write down my food every night.
That's amazing. That's really, really impressive. So, and then you have this website, foodfreedom11.com. And what happens if somebody visits that website?
Yeah, they'll get some tips on how to get started. I talk about the scale. I talk about how important implementing water is. I talk about, you see a picture of me when I was a chubby kid. There's just, how to get started, in the beginning. So
okay.
Good. It's just a good video.
Some free tips.
20 minutes long. They can check in there and see, is this somebody I'd want to work with? Is this somebody I like? Does she have the mindset that I want to go with? So it's like an introduction to me and to what I do. And if they want to choose this way of life, I also have my website, jenniferalembik.com, and I'm very active on Facebook.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with your friends. And once again, be sure to subscribe to the Power of Your Mind podcast if not already. We can be found as Hip Talk on all our social media accounts. So like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, subscribe on YouTube, and sign up for your free self-hypnosis video training course at hiptalk.com. Be sure to subscribe to the Power of Your Mind podcast, and you'll be instantly notified of the moment the next podcast becomes
JenniferAlembik.com is your main website, and then you also have your Facebook page.
How you're enjoying these episodes, and that way you're making a contribution toward others getting to share in this valuable information.
Jennifer.
Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon. You've been listening to the Power of Your Mind podcast, brought to you by HipTalk.com, Personal Growth Club, and HypnoCloud apps available.
Very good.
At
Well,
iTunes.
wow, it's been very informative, and thank you so much for all the information that you shared and your generosity and speaking to our guest here at Power of Your Mind. And I encourage our guest, if you are somebody who has this problem and would like to get on the path toward freeing yourself of this, I would absolutely suggest going and checking out Jennifer's website. And any last final words?
No, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having me, and it was a really great conversation. I think we touched on a lot of important points.
We definitely
did. My goal is, if I can help one person out there know that they are not alone, that food addiction exists, and there is a solution, and we can help you. There's help.
Absolutely. Yes.
You don't have to suffer.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hey, Victoria. Thank you.
Thank you.